Hi, I'm Susan Rutledge, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to use Envelope Distort in Adobe Illustrator. Now, if you want to get the most out of this tool, there are 5 essential principles you need to know, and I'm going to show you all of those in this video. Then, I'm going to show you step by step how I used Envelope Distort to create this Christmas tree. This is going to be a fun one, so let's get started. The first principle is keep your shapes and your spacing simple. These two objects are perfect for showing you the difference between a rounded object with Envelope Distort and an object that has long and narrow points on it. You can hardly even read the letters on the one on the right, and yet orange juice shows up great on the left. So keep your shapes simple, and rounded is always going to work better. Then limit the number of divisions on your object for the Envelope Distort to 2 or at the very most 3, because that will also influence whether or not the words are readable. Also, have enough spacing in between those letters so that they don't all run together. My go-to method to divide it up is the eraser tool. Let me come over to the layers panel. I'm going to hide these layers, and let's pull up my ellipse. And then I'm going to go over to the left toolbar and grab the eraser tool, keyboard shortcut Shift E. You can see the size of the eraser head moving around on my cursor, and that's way too big for this project. So with it active, I'm going to press the return key, and that opens the eraser tool options dialog box. The size slider is here at the bottom, and we can change the size smaller or larger this way, or I can simply type in a value, and I'm going to type in 25 points and say OK. And this is a much better size for this project. And then all I'll do is drag across my object, and now my one circle has become 2 pieces, and that gets me ready for the Envelope Distort. Now, principle number 2 is choose the right font. All of the examples here were created using this shape on the bottom right. The only difference is every one of them has a different font. Now, these fonts don't come with Illustrator, but if you're a Creative Cloud subscriber, you can download them for free from fonts.adobe.com. And there are actually hundreds to choose from. I'm always looking for a font that is bold but not too heavy. You do want a little space in between the letters to make those words easier to read. And then you'll have to choose between a serif font or a sans serif font. Now, your serif fonts are going to be like the top left example, where you have the extra strokes on the ends of the letters. And in some cases, that can actually make your Envelope Distort easier to read versus a more streamlined font, which is your sans serif or without a serif. And that can be nice in some cases as well. However, in this example on the top right, this J is so streamlined that you can't even tell what that letter is. So you may have to try 2 or 3 different fonts to get the look that you want for the project that you're working on. And then, regardless of what font you're using, you're almost always going to come out with a better design when you use all capital letters in your envelope distortion. Number 3, order your layers correctly. First, let me reveal our text. Now, before Envelope Distort will work, you've got to have your object and your text on the right layers. And it's impossible to really tell where those layers are just by looking at the artboard, because nothing's overlapping here. That's why we rely on the Layers panel. Every single object and every single individual piece of text is going to be on its own layer. In the Layers panel, there is a hierarchy. So the top of the list is actually at the front layer of the artboard. So let me just pull the word juice over, and now you can see that the text is in front of the object. Same thing with orange because it's the next one on the list. And then these two pieces, which are our objects, well, they are going to be behind the text. So if I select my piece and I hold down the Shift key and I select orange and I come up to Object, down to Envelope Distort, over and down to Make with Top Object, I'm going to get an error message because my object is not on a layer above my text. So I'll say OK to get rid of that. And then I'm going to fix it by moving the text underneath my object. So I'm going to select the word juice, hold down the Shift key, I'm going to select orange. Let's go ahead and select the whole line here as well. Then I'll hold down my mouse and drag the text underneath the layers that have the orange pieces of my object. Now, when I select my top piece, hold down the Shift key and select the word orange, go up to Object, down to Envelope Distort, over and down to Make with Top Object. Illustrator does a beautiful job of placing the word right there on my object. So if you get that error message, just be sure and go back and check your layers. Now before we move on, I want to go back up to Object and look at Envelope Distort, and I want to show you there are a couple of other options here, Make with Warp and Make with Mesh, and we're not going to talk about those in this video. Quite honestly, I haven't found any usefulness for either one of those. You can play with those on your own, but we're going to be dealing exclusively in this video with Make with Top Object. Okay, now for principle number 4, save a copy of the background object. And you want to do that before you start your Envelope Distort. I'm going to undo my previous move. We'll go to Edit, Undo, Make Envelope, and I'm going to select both pieces, hold down the Option key, and I'm going to drag a copy over to the side and save it, because as you noticed when we created the first piece here, and we'll just go ahead and do this again, Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Top Object, and let's do the bottom one. I'll select Juice, Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Top Object. I have the letters distorted, but I don't have the background shape anymore. And that may be fine if you don't plan on using a background shape, but you also might want to save the background shape in case you decide you want to try a different font. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back and create your object and start from scratch. So make a background copy, and then if you want to add this later, you can simply come over, place it here, and then we can come up to Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. The other thing you might want to do is save an additional copy that has no division in it from the eraser tool. So if you wanted a solid color behind it, you'd have that option as well. The thing I don't like about this option is some of the letters are right along the edge of that circle and some of them are down just a little bit, and to me it doesn't look neat. So I'm going to show you my favorite way of creating the Envelope Distort and keeping that background color. So we're going to have to do a little undo, so I'll speed up the video as I undo those previous steps. All right, I have my copy here just for good measure, but what I'm going to do is select both of these pieces and go up to Object, Path, over and down to Offset Path. In the Offset Path, I have a minus in front of the value, and that's telling Illustrator to make an additional object that amount of space smaller than the original object. If I had a positive number, it would tell Illustrator to make an additional object larger than that original object. I'll leave this setting as a minus 0.1389 and say OK. Then I'm going to change the color just so it's a little easier for us to see. And then come back to the layers panel. And because I have added these pinks after I added the orange, they are actually on top layers above the juice and the orange, so we're good there. Then I'll select the top piece, hold down the shift key, select the word orange, go up to object, down to envelope distort, over and down to make with top object, and we'll do the same thing with the bottom piece, object, envelope distort, and make with top object. And that to me looks so much neater and more professional. I still have my backup copy if I want to make some changes, but what I like about this is the neatness of how it looks on the object. So that's my tip for having a really neat envelope distort with your background shape as well. And then finally, principle number 5, expand the envelope to edit the letters. If I just select these letters right here and go to the properties panel, we can see that the fill is black, but in the appearance panel, I'm seeing a gray fill. And if I try to make any changes at all, well, I'm not able to do that. But if I go up to Object, down to Expand, and click here, make sure Object and Fill are checked and say OK. Now I'm going to be able to edit these letters. Let's come in and change these to a yellow. I'm going to have to expand the bottom as well if I want to make changes there. So Object, Expand, make sure again Object and Fill are checked and say OK. And then we can change the color here. Let's go with that brighter yellow. That's much prettier. And then we can even add a stroke. The other thing you can do once the letters are expanded is move the letters around just a little bit. Now what we'll want to do is ungroup them. So we'll go up to Object, Ungroup. But for some reason, ungrouping once doesn't work, so you're going to have to select it and repeat the process. Go up to Object, down to Ungroup, and then I can select just one letter and I can slightly move it around. I can even get the direct selection tool and move some anchors, so you have the ability to move these letters around once they've been expanded. Okay, so now that you know the 5 principles for using Envelope Distort, I'm going to show you how I created my Christmas tree. The first thing we'll do is get the rectangle tool. We'll go to the left toolbar, click on it, and then click on the artboard to open the rectangle dialog box. And I'm going to type in 8 inches for the width, tab down and type 9 inches for the height, and say OK. We'll give this a green fill, and then I'll get the pen tool, and I'm going to add an anchor to the top line right at the midpoint, and I'm seeing midpoint because I have Smart Guides turned on. Let me click down here, and then I'll show you where to go. Under View, if you don't have Smart Guides turned on, you'll come down to almost the very bottom of View and turn them on here, or use the keyboard shortcut Command U. Now we want to remove the anchors on the 2 top sides, so I'll get the Delete Anchor Point tool or the minus sign and click here, and there's the base for our tree. Then I'm going to get the star tool, so back to the left toolbar, click down with the mouse for the flyout menu and grab this star. I'll place my cursor right on that top anchor, and then I'm going to hold the shift key down and I'm going to drag until I have a width of about 2.75 and then release my mouse. Now I'll select both the star and the tree. Come over to the Properties panel. In the Pathfinder area, I'll click on the ellipsis and I'll click on Divide. And then we'll select them again, go up to Object and Ungroup, and then I'm going to select the big part of the star and the point of the tree, and with just these selected, I'll go back to the Pathfinder area and click on Click to Unite. Now I can just use the arrow key and slightly move that star up, and I have two pieces here. Next, I'm going to select the star and the tree again, go back up to Object, down to Path, over and down to Offset Path, and Illustrator remembers the last value I had in here, which is a negative value. So we're going to say OK, and now we have a smaller star as an offset and a smaller tree as an offset as well. I'm going to select all of these, change the stroke color to that same green. Then I'll select the outer part of the star, and we're going to change its color to this light yellow. And I don't really have to change this, but I'm going to so it's easier to see. Now I'm going to make my two divisions using the eraser tool, but before that, I'll go to the Layers panel and lock this back green layer. Let's just select it and make sure we get the right one. I'm going to click right here to the right of the eyeball, and that locks that layer. So when I get the eraser tool, and it's the right size because, again, Illustrator remembers the last value I used with that tool. So we're ready to go, and I'll simply drag across once and then again. And notice, because I had the dark green locked, I only erased the top layer. Now we'll get the type tool to create our words. So I'll come over to the left toolbar, click on the T here, and click down on the artboard, and I'll type the word joy. I'm using the font Impetus Inline, which I downloaded from fonts.adobe.com. And I'm going to make a copy now. Let's hold down the Option key, drag out one copy, and then duplicate that move with the keyboard shortcut Command D. Now let's change this to love and this to peace. Now we're almost ready to do the envelope distort, but we've got to check our layer position first. So we'll go back to the Layers panel, and my words were the last thing that I added, so they are at the top of the list, and they're going to be on that front layer of the artboard. And remember, they've got to be behind or underneath the objects that we're using for the envelope distort. So I'm going to select Peace, hold the Shift key down, and click on Love and Joy to select all three of these at the same time. And then I'm going to drag them all the way down to the bottom of the Layers panel. And now we're ready to start. So let's get the selection tool. I'll pick the top piece and select Joy, go to Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Top Object. Same with Love, Object, down to Envelope Distort, over and down to Make with Top Object, and the final piece here. There we go. Now we have all three of the pieces in place. I want to change the color, so I'm going to have to expand this. So I've got all three of the Envelope Distort letters selected. I'll go up to Object and Expand. I do have Object and Fill checked, so I'll say OK, and then I'll go to the Properties panel, and I can change all of these at the same time. And so here we have our letters in place. Now to create the trunk, we'll get the Rectangle tool and click on the artboard. I'm going to make the width 1.5 inches, tab down, make the height 1, and say OK. And then let's change the color to brown, and we'll move this down and line it up in the center. And then the last piece is going to be the decoration in between the letters. And what I did here was create a super fast pattern brush. So I'll get the ellipse tool and click down on the artboard, and my circle is going to be 0.24 inches. Tab down by 0.24 inches and say OK. We'll change the color to this little light green that we've been using, and then with this selected, I'm going to go up to Window, down to Brushes, and on the bottom bar of the Brushes panel, I'll click the New Brush icon. We're going to check Pattern Brush, say OK, and Illustrator takes the selected piece of art and turns it into a pattern brush. We don't need to make any changes. I'll simply say OK. Now I'll get the pen tool, and we don't want the delete anchor point. So I'll press down to get the flyout menu, and here is the pen tool. We'll start where we want it to start, and then I'll click down where I want it to end and drag out a little shape here. And I'll hit V for the selection tool, and that closes that off. Now I don't want a fill here, so let's change that. And then we'll click on the pattern brush to add our first little decoration here. Go back, get the pen tool again, start here. This time we're going to have 2 little waves. So we'll add the curve, come back and click on the anchor to change directions, and slightly curve it, and then hit the V on the keyboard to get the selection tool again, and that closes that out, and that finishes our design. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned some things about using Envelope Distort in Adobe Illustrator. Before I go, I do want to invite you to subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future tutorials, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye now.